good morning, everyone. We are so glad to see you this morning. Welcome to Co-work and Connect by Walker's Legacy. We are so glad to see you. My name is Mia Sims Washington, and I am the Director of Digital Programming and Events for Walker's Legacy, and I am pleased to serve as your moderator today. Named in honor of Madam C.J. Walker, Walker's Legacy was created with a mission to cultivate an ecosystem of access designed to inspire, equip, and engage a global network of professional and entrepreneurial women of color. You can learn more about Walker's Legacy by joining us online at www.walkerslegacy.com. The Co-work and Connect virtual morning chat series is aimed to learn the best practices for remote work, the importance of mentoring, staying sharp while staying in, financial planning for small businesses, and self-care routine tips during this time of quarantine and social distancing. So let's get started with today's program. Today we have a fabulous guest, Dr. Rosalind Aker-Black, affectionately known as Dr. Roz. She is an award-winning psychologist and has over 14 years of experience in providing psychological services to children, families, and couples in the nonprofit, government, and private industry sectors. Currently, she is the Chief Operating Officer for the Goal Grinders Foundation, a nonprofit organization that provides leadership and entrepreneurial training with a STEM focus for at-risk middle and high school girls. She also serves as a psychology professor at local universities in the DC area, training nurses and the next generation of clinical and forensic psychologists. It is my honor to welcome Dr. Roz today.
Hi, thank you.
Hi.
Good morning. How are you this morning?
I am great. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Can't complain at all. Happy to be here.
So sorry, I'm playing with the backgrounds here.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I love that you are like technologically savvy. I am so not. I can Facebook and Instagram all day long, but anything outside of that, I have to talk to my husband about it.
I try. I don't always get it, but I get there eventually. So, well, it is so glad to have you today. Thank you for sharing your time and talent and treasury with us. So, we're so glad to have you. Where are you located at?
I am in the DC metro area. I'm originally from Georgia, but I now live here in the DC metro area.
Okay, wonderful. Well, we start each of these sessions with your story. Each of these fabulous ladies have a story that's always interesting on how they got to where they are. So we would love to hear your story.
Absolutely. You know, my story kind of starts as a little girl when it comes to the whole idea of being an entrepreneur. My father was a serial entrepreneur, so I saw him always creating businesses for our community. And so that always stuck with me as I went off to college and trying to decide what it was that I wanted to do with my life. And so when I got into the career force or whatnot, I realized that not that I'm not someone that doesn't like to take direction, but I do kind of like doing my own thing. And I realized that I would become very frustrated in situations because of systems that weren't in place as a psychologist, especially helping my community, you know? So then I just decided, listen, these are my people. I want to help my people the best way that I can help my people. So I just started developing programs to do that. So it started out with teleclasses, where because I knew that people could not afford possibly, a session for 150 an hour weekly, right? But I knew that I could do some kind of psychoeducational course for 25 bucks virtually that people can sit at home and watch and learn and understand if they were dealing with, psychological issues. So I kind of started out that way. Then it turned into live events, and then it just turned into this full-fledged program that I have now. And, it's so interesting because, with our foundation goal grinders, we were invited to a meeting. When we left that meeting, we were offered a $150,000 grant for a foundation that we had not even set up. Yeah, it does not happen at all. We were not, like nothing was done. Like we'd had this idea about wanting to help, at-risk girls, but that was just it. It was an idea. Then we went to this meeting, and then the next thing you know, we were like, holy crap, we have a month to put a whole program together, and we have to become a nonprofit. So I say that to say that in this journey of being an entrepreneur, you are always working and somebody is always watching you. And regardless of whether whether you have anything together or not, your work will speak for itself, right? So the proof is in the pudding. Keep showing up for yourself every single day. Keep showing up for your clients. Keep showing up in your services, and people literally will listen. That meeting we were at, they literally were throwing money at us and were giving us kind of like ideas like, well, maybe you can do this and maybe you can do that, because there is a need. There is always a need. And so I kind of build my practice on this idea that there is always a need. And I've become very like I have a Facebook group where my background is psychology, obviously, but my passion is people having healthy relationships. So I have this Facebook group. We have about 11K members and like maybe 8K more trying to get in. I just can't get everyone in, so rapidly. But, people are just having conversations about relationships. And so I go through and I look at what people are talking about and I develop programs off what people are talking about. So I'm always trying to keep my ear to the ground to understand the problems that people are experiencing in the moment, and to make sure that my work stays relevant. So that's pretty much my journey is being an entrepreneur.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, tell us my side here. Tell us. So we're talking about self-care
Yeah.
today, which is very critical right now in the times that we're in. Where do you want to? It's in the time of crisis. One of the things you said is that while we're distance, it says social isolation. So what is social isolation, and how do you think that it's affecting us?
This is a great question. And let me just say this. If you guys hear noise in the background, that's my dog snoring. He snores like a grown man, like he's worked a full 14-hour day shift. So I apologize if you're hearing that, because it seems like the louder I get, the louder he gets. So my apologies.
Okay.
But in terms of social isolation, it really just means that there's just like this social disconnect. And so while we're in this quarantine, it has provided this avenue of where we aren't able to see each other like we normally would do. Anyone who knows me personally, that I am Mrs. Queen, extrovert, the fun captain, a social butterfly. And even in this quarantine, I have had my struggles with not being able to see my friends, not being able to go to, like, I literally woke up one morning and I was crying because I wanted to go to brunch. And before I realized it, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm crying over this. But it really wasn't the idea that that brunch was the big thing, but it was what brunch symbolized for me. It was a time for me to get together with my girls, a time for me to have great, engaging conversation, a time for me to people watch. I love to people watch, a time for me to be out and about. And being in the space of where you can't do that so readily right now has been very hard on all of us. And so social isolation, and I like to say it as this, because you could be in a house full of people and still feel very socially isolated. So it's not this idea of just being alone, where alone and loneliness does kind of add to the equation of social isolation, but it is this idea of just not being connected, not being socially connected to others in the way that we may have before pre-COVID. So here's
Mhm.
the truth. If in fact the reality is that we will all go through social isolation at 3 points in our lives, right? The first time that we deal with social isolation is when we're like that middle school age. So any parents out there right now that have middle schoolers that are driving you crazy, just understand that they're going through this process of trying to figure out their identity. So kind of not knowing where you fit in can put us in a place of having social isolation because we're trying to find our crew. We're trying to find our people. We're trying to figure out who we align with, who's good for us, and not really having all the skills, right, to really know what's a good friend and what's a bad friend, right? Until you have some type of situation where trauma occurs and you're like, that's not what a good friend looks like. So
Mhm.
that's the first time that we actually deal with this idea of social isolation around that middle school age. Then typically when we get into this middle adulthood. So, like our 40s, 45, that age is typically called the midlife crisis. That's another time that we are also experiencing social isolation because you've done everything, right? You have the career, you have the family, you have um, the house, you have the white picket fence, or you're performing well in some areas of your life. And so it feels like, where do I fit in now? What is my identity at this age? What is next? We all have that what is next um, idea that we are always toiling with. So that's kind of like the third time that we may experience social isolation because we outgrow our friends. We outgrow things that may have excited us when we were in our 20s that no longer excites us now. It's so funny. Back in my 20s, listen, I was the girl that was hanging out Thursday. My weekend started on Thursday, and it might have ended Monday morning. I was girl that was like going to everything. Just having to have my face in a place. But now in my 40s, I'm like, who's gonna be there? What's the situation like? Like none of those questions were important to me before, right? But as you get older, as you mature, and as you matriculate through this thing called life, you go through this thing of where you are looking for a very new identity. You're trying to figure out who it is that you are at the age that you're in. So that's the second time that we deal with social isolation. And then the third time that we'll deal with it is when we are in our elderly phase. Because in that time, we are losing friends to death, or maybe they've moved away, or, um, we're dealing with ailments, that may diminish our participation in life. And so we're in a place of figuring out again, where do I fit in? Who am I now? So we go through social isolation. So I want people to understand that it is a very normal thing. It's human nature that we do go through this thing. But the reality is that if you were not in a great place pre-COVID, it's magnified now that we're in COVID because now we are being forced to limit our interaction with others. And so when you know that it's affecting you, and it's going to affect everybody, this does not mean that you have mental health issues. Let me just put that caveat out there. Does not mean you have mental health issues at all. But what it simply states is that you're in a place of where you are feeling that disconnect and now you don't know what to do with it.
Mhm.
Right? And so to find out how it's affecting you, I encourage people to monitor their symptoms, right? So is there well, there's a change in all of us, right? With some of us are rolling out of bed and just going to work. We're not doing that normal routine of getting up, taking a shower, brushing our hair, brushing our teeth because we don't no longer have a commute. We're working from home. And so that has changed our schedule in a way. But because of that, it makes us feel less productive. It makes us feel as if, what are we adding, right? What are we adding to this world? And so if things are becoming very overwhelming where you're not sleeping or you're oversleeping, being that you're sleeping too much. That's something that you want to pay attention to. Or you have a decrease in appetite, or you're eating everything. And listen, the first couple of weeks in quarantine, my quarantine snacks were gone.
Yeah, everybody talks about the COVID-15.
Yeah, I was like, I'm not doing this right. Like, I'm not doing it. These snacks were supposed to last for 2 weeks. They're gone in like 3 days. Like, this is not working. I gotta find a new way to do this, right? Because you're sitting around, you're just at home, you're bored eating, you're watching Netflix, and you're like, I need my snacks for Netflix. All these reasons, because food means nurturing, right? So anything to make us feel comfort in the moment, we're doing, right? So if you find that you are doing way too much of anything that you have been doing, or way less than anything that you were doing, then that's how you know that this may be affecting you. Even like going to the grocery store. People are developing like social anxiety now because they're just afraid to be out. And I'll share, so I'm very transparent. So I'll share this story. Here I am, the great psychologist. The first time I went to a grocery store, I walked in and walked right back out because I felt like I was about to have a panic attack because I didn't see people with masks on. People were not social distancing. And I felt like everything was jumping onto my skin. It was terrifying. And so I had to start out with a smaller store, right? So that I could get used to being in a public place again, because I was relying on Instacart. I was getting my groceries from Instacart. Like, it was my lifesaver. And I was like, I really have to get back out there and, face the world. So to speak, I can't live my whole life by Instacart, getting my groceries. And of course, my husband was going out doing some of the grocery shopping because he has this thing where he has to feel the meat to make sure it's right, right? But I was like, I can't participate in that with you right now, and so I had to work up to it. So and I didn't even realize I would have that issue, right? I had no idea that I would have that issue until it presented itself for me. And so there are situations that will occur in the moment where you may not even realize that you're having an issue until it happens. But when it happens, acknowledge what it is that you're feeling. Like, don't deny that. Acknowledge what it is so that you can develop a plan to ensure that you are doing things that are on the right track for you to get to a better place.
Okay, so acknowledge it and then develop a plan. I remember going grocery shopping early on when everything was gone.
Yeah.
And that was the weirdest, anxiety filled, and people just clamoring. They would put stuff out and people would be like this. And I had to psych myself up to go to grocery store. So I made sure I had happy music, and I just had to get myself in the right frame to be able to do this. And being someone of faith too, I was just like, okay, God, it's going to be okay.
Right.
It's going to be okay. But you just have to acknowledge that you feel that way. One of the things I notice is that I cry more at the most stupid, sappy endings to a movie. It can be sometimes even commercial. And I'm like, Lord, Mia, why are you crying?
Oh, absolutely.
And sometimes you just need that. I needed that release, and then I'm fine.
Yeah.
Sure. But I think it is important to acknowledge it, because I think people just ignore it, and then it builds up.
Absolutely.
And it'll show in other ways.
Absolutely. Acknowledge what you're feeling. Listen, I love a good cry. And I just remember when I first got married, because like I do at least a very good cry at least once a month, right? And I'm like, I have no idea why I'm crying, but I know I need to release whatever it is. When I first got married, my husband was like, "Are you okay? Are you all right?" Because like it would be like third grade crying, weeping, sobbing, like a wailing cry sometimes. And he was like, what is wrong with you? He's like, are all women crazy? And I'm like, no, it's not that all women are crazy, but we recognize when we need to release. And that crying, letting that crying go. And plus I was working with children who at the time who had been sexually abused. So it like had to release that, had to get it out some kind of way, right? And I just remember him getting to a place like, oh, you're having your moment. Like he started recognizing that, this is what she does. She has to release. I tell anybody, if you find yourself crying, go for it. And in this pandemic, I'm just like you. That I can watch the most happiest thing and I'm crying. And I'm like, why am I crying? Sometimes I don't even realize I'm crying. Like tears are just running down. But it really is. It really is everything that's going on. And because let's really think about this pandemic when it first occurred. We didn't know the truth. There were so many different stories that were coming out. We didn't know how to protect ourselves. We were told don't wear a mask. We were told all these things, right? So when there is chaos, because that's it, literally what was taking place. When there is chaos, we don't know how to function, which is why I always encourage my clients to develop a plan. Because in chaos, if you have a plan, it decreases that anxiety at least by 75%, because at least you have something to fall back on. I am always the girl that if this happens, then what? If that happens, then what? What's the next line? And it can be overwhelming. It can be overwhelming. But for me, it's very important for me to know that if there is something in place, then I know what to do. Because our anxiety increases because we don't know what to do. And so when chaos is happening, when we're being gunned down in the streets, right? All of this was happening right at the beginning of the pandemic with the George Floyd murder and Ahmaud Arbery. All these things were taking place. And for people of color, let's be real. We were experiencing two pandemics, right? We were experiencing COVID, and then we were experiencing this racial pandemic, which were affecting us at higher rates than any other, ethnic group. And so hearing these disparaging comments on the news, such as African Americans are dying at a much higher rate because they have these underlying conditions, that's terrifying. So, if you have those underlying conditions, you aren't trying to do anything. You're like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm autoimmune. I can't, I have these deficiencies, so I can't do anything because I don't want to die. And we just didn't know enough about it. So for me, when this pandemic first started, the way that I decreased my anxiety is that I took my temperature every single morning. It was like, today, I don't have COVID. I don't have a temperature, right? And that was kind of like one of the things that kind of decreased my anxiety. That was part of my plan, making sure that I was aware of my numbers and what was going on with me, in my body, so that if I felt like the normal temperature is like 98.6. If I ever hit like 98.7, I was like drinking tea and, making sure I was drinking lemon water to try to decrease all these things. Might have been crazy, but it was a plan that kind of decreased my anxiety. So I encourage all people to, if this, then what? What are you going to do? Have a plan of action, because that plan of action will mobilize you to move rather than staying stuck in fear, anxiety, and just caught up in negative emotions.
Mm-hmm. That's really good. Yeah, I have some new normals just around the house that just help. Okay, this is what we're going to do today. To piggyback off of that, people are feeling all kinds of emotions. So sad, happy, angry, frustrated, nervous, scared. What do they do in those instances where their emotions are just taking them over, not to go to dark dark space?
So I'm happy that you asked that question, because people, when they think about emotionality, they think it's just all bad, right? But here's the truth about emotions. I say experience any emotion that you are having. Go through that emotional process. The difference is what you do when you're having that emotional process that makes all the difference in the world. So if you are feeling bad, if you're prone to self-medicate with a little bit of puff, puff, pass, pass, or, drinking, or, with opioids, that's something that you shouldn't do. So if you know that sometimes you get into a space where you feel down, and because you're feeling down, it's much easier to turn to those type of substances, then that's when you know that there might be that you might need to do some kind of interventional work with yourself. And what I mean by that is find something healthier to cope with those processes. So get out and go and walk, right? Get some sunshine, get some vitamin D, do some exercises, because what that will do is that when we exercise, that increases our endorphins. And when our endorphins go up, that also increases our serotonin levels, that increase our mood. And so it's going to elevate our mood just by simply walking 20 minutes a day, simply walking. And you can do that by, social distancing. That's not something that, that's going to cause you to be around other people. You can, or even just getting in your backyard and turning on the wobble and dancing, right? Dancing for, I think that song is like 8 minutes long. 8 minutes of cardio, right? Of doing it by yourself is going to increase your endorphins. So it's going to change your mood state. Because here's the truth. I never tell people to shut down their emotions. And the reason why, and you mentioned it a little bit earlier, because when we deny how we feel, we suppress our emotions, then we have these moments where it feels like someone has just exploded. They've had like this impulsive, kind of chaotic emotional outburst. And really, what that is like this buildup of everything that we are feeling. So I encourage us all, right, to do an emotional gut check. And so, really, if we can get a little psychological here, if that's okay. In the psychological world, we call it the CAB effect, right? So C stands for our cognitions. That is how we think. That is our thought process. That's how we take in information processing. So our thought process, our cognitions, they influence our affect. Our affect is our mood state. It's our emotional states that we experience. And then the B of the CAB effect stands for behavior, right? So our thoughts influence our feelings, and our thoughts and our influences our behavior. So negative thoughts, negative feelings, negative behavior. Positive thoughts, positive feelings, positive behavior. So people wake up and they're like, oh, I just woke up on the wrong side of the bed today. Today's just not my day. Pause. You didn't wake up on the wrong side of the bed. You got up on the same side that you get up every single morning. So, let's have a moment of where we are talking or thinking about what it is that you're thinking. And the truth of the matter is, none of us are evaluating our thoughts. No one is saying, self, what are we thinking today? Like, no one's doing that. That's not a normal thing that people do, right? Because we don't recognize that that's something that we probably should do. But I guarantee you, if you are engaged and thinking about what it is that you're thinking and kind of writing it down, like I had this thought today, it's going to tell you why you're feeling that way. It's going to tell you why you've done that behavior, because we have all been in a situation of we've done something and we're like, oh my God, why did I do that? I can't believe I did that. Right? But if we go back and evaluate our thoughts and we evaluate how we're feeling, it will give us the very reason of why we did something that we did. It now that I know that, it's kind of crazy for me to be in a world of questioning myself about, well, why did I do that? When I know the steps that I can take. Remember, I'm the girl with the plan, right? So I know the steps that I can take now to go back and do an assessment about, okay, I did this behavior because of this. I was feeling this way, and I thought this person said something about me, so I reacted in this way, or I thought that the review was going to go horrible, or I thought I just wasn't worthy in that moment. And because I didn't feel worthy, I felt unworthy. And because I thought that I was unworthy and I felt unworthy, I had this unworthy behavior that I now completely regret. Right. So I encourage people to get in tune with your thoughts because when you are able to manage your thoughts, it's going to help you manage your emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And our thoughts, really, guys, our thoughts and our emotions, they are all a choice. They are all a choice. And that's very hard for people to really understand because when situations happen, you get into this place of, you make me feel this way, right? But the
Mm-hmm.
reality is this: no one can make you feel any way. We are all in charge of our own emotions, and we make the daily decision to decide how we feel in any given moment at any given time. There may be situational factors that may influence that feeling, but we are in control of how we feel. We are. And that sometimes when someone ticks you off to the high heels, it does not feel that you are in control of your emotions and you have this impulsive behavior. But the reality is, we can't control how anybody else, how they feel, and no one can control how we feel. We all have a choice to make a decision about how we feel. So I say this to say, in regards to managing our emotions, have your emotions, have your emotional moment. If you gotta cry, cry. If you gotta punch the air because you're that man, punch the air. If you gotta, run because you feel like if you don't run, you're gonna hit somebody, then do what you got to do. Get that emotional process out because what I don't want you to do is to have this big explosive moment and then, you just have all these things that just, become a casualty, like your relationships because of this explosive moment. So have your emotions, but the way to manage those emotions is to absolutely assess your thoughts so that you can understand what you are feeling so that you can manage your behavior because people see behavior first. They don't see your emotions. They see how you behave first. And so the one thing that you truly want to manage is your behavior because that's what people judge you by. That's how people characterize you by. That's what you're known for. That's how people see you is by your behavior. So just doing that three-step process of looking at your thoughts, looking at your, emotions, and then thinking about how you're behaving can, save you a world of damaged relationships, if that makes sense.
That's a nice little nugget. I hope everybody is taking that. That's good. That's good. Um, yeah. I have a therapist that I talk to every so often, and it's amazing as she started to dive into my life and how I was raised and where you are in your siblings, and that there were some things I did based on things that happened 20 years ago or how I did this with my brothers, and but it affects you now. And so she said, that's why you do that. And it was just like, that is why I do that.
Yeah.
And not even realizing
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I call that our default behaviors. And kudos to you for seeing a therapist. I think everyone should see one.
it.
Because honestly, people think that you're going to someone and they're going to tell you all about you. That's not our job at all. What we do is that we guide you to insight, right? So
Yeah.
we help you figure out why you're doing what it is that you're doing, or why you're having the difficulties in your life that you are having. But it really is a collaborative effort, and it really depends on the client, how much they give us in order for us to be able to help them. But I call that our default behaviors, and what I mean by that is that we all do things that work for us, right? So I still drive the same way my father taught me how to drive. I still tie my shoes the same way my mother taught me how to tie my shoes, because those are our default behaviors. It's what we've learned. It's worked for us in the past. And so we all do what has worked for us in the past. So back to the example of someone being very impulsive. At some point in their life, them, I think the kids call it popping off, right? At some point in their life, they popped off on somebody. So now people have gotten the message of, don't mess with her, she's crazy. Don't mess with him, he's crazy.
Mhm.
It's going to be, that has worked for them. So and when that anxiety creeps up in terms of trying to figure out if a situation where they may feel distressed, they're going to do that default behavior. They are going to pop off, right? They're going to pop off because that has worked for them in the past. Just an example I'll never forget. It wasn't my client, but I was sitting in a court case, and the young lady, gosh, she couldn't have been no more than about 4 feet. She was a short little feisty thing. But the judge said something that she didn't like, and the next thing I knew, the stiletto was thrown at the judge. And it was this idea that that was her default behavior. That was her reaction to someone disrespecting her. She didn't see a judge. She didn't see that she was in the court of law. She saw you disrespected me, and this is what I do when I am disrespected. I'm going to put you back in your place. So we all have these default behaviors that we, rely on, that we don't even know subconsciously that we are using. We don't even know it.
Yeah. If anybody has questions, please feel free to post them in the comments. And I'd be more than happy to ask them to Dr. Oz. So, Dr. Oz, here's the question. You're managing, you're doing the best, you're still not feeling great, or you're still having issues and you can't shake it. When does somebody know, or what are the signs when somebody should maybe seek some professional help or speak to a therapist?
Absolutely great question. Because, sometimes we get into this place of feeling as if we are, if we reach out for help, right, then that means that we're weak. And so we suffer in silence. We're going through things and we're suffering in silence because we're just too afraid to say, hey, I have this issue. So I really want to stress today that recognizing that you need help is the bravest thing that you can do for yourself. It is the absolute best thing that you can do for yourself, the absolute best thing that you can do. So in the psychological world, when we determine that someone may be really struggling with something, is that we look at them in two different settings. So how is it manifesting at home? How is it manifesting in the workplace? Are you unable to do your job? Can you not concentrate? Are you struggling at work with turning in things that need to be turned in? Or in school, are you not able to get your work done? Are you missing deadlines? Is the situation impacting you in that arena? Then that's something that we look at. And in your home, has your home become very tension filled? Is it impacting you in your home? Are you not able to function in your home in the way that you have been functioning in your home? That is something else that we look at. So we look at those two things to see how it's really impacting you and your functioning. And if you are under functioning, then that is the time that you should be looking to seek professional help. So say, for instance, you can't get out the bed. And that wasn't you pre-COVID. That wasn't you, that's never been really how you function. But now you're like, I can't get out the bed. I'm struggling. It's a chore for me to get out the bed. You want to cry because you have to get out the bed. Then that's something, and you're missing work. You're missing participating in life, basically. That is something that would be of great concern for a therapist, because then that means that you may be dealing with depression or something of that nature. So, or the social anxiety that I mentioned earlier with my own self. I can't even imagine being in a store and people clamoring over me. Like I would lose it. Like I don't even think I'm that good right now that I would be able to do that, right? But knowing that I can't function in that situation, I kind of took steps. Again, I'm the girl with the plan. I kind of took steps to in a smaller environment to see if I could handle it, right? So if I were not able to go into this smaller environment, then that's when I would know, you know what, let me reach out to a therapist, someone who can guide me through this, who can help me through this social anxiety, so that so that I'm not stuck in this emotion and it becomes a bigger issue. Because here's the truth. When you don't manage it when it's small, it becomes a bigger issue.
Mhm.
So I don't want that to happen for anyone. I encourage us all to absolutely be very vigilant about what it is that we're feeling, right? And if you're having more down days than you've had ever before, pay attention to that because your body is telling you something, right? Your body is saying, hey, I'm not in a good place. I don't know what's wrong. Pay attention to that. And nowadays, we're all doing telehealth, so it's not like you have to go into an office to see someone. You can actually do virtual therapy at this point, which has been very beneficial for a lot of us because we're afraid to go out. So telehealth has been a blessing because you can still get your services and get what you need, right, to help you still in the safety of your home.
Mhm.
So just when you're not functioning at that level that you were functioning at, when you see that it's impacting different areas of your life, your relationships, your home life, your work life, your school life, if it's impacting at least two or more, then that's when you should reach out and say, maybe I need extra help with this. So if you're missing appointments, if you're missing meetings, if you just can't pull yourself together to and in this climate, nobody wants to lose their job.
Mhm.
You can't pull yourself together to function because you are struggling, right? And you're like, oh well, it's just a job. Having that kind of mindset, then that's when I encourage people to, reach out for professional help. And let me just say this: you could call any city in America. You can dial 211, and you get it's just like 911, but you can dial 211 to get social services for yourself. So any kind of resources that you may need in any community. So the resources will be local to your community. So I encourage people, if you don't know where to turn to 211 first.
Mhm. That's good. Um, and I just, we're going to be wrapping up soon. I really just want to encourage everyone, please pay attention to your self-care during this time.
Absolutely.
Please, please do it. It's vital. Whether you're male or female, pay attention to it. Your body talks to you. It tells you your emotion. It's telling you something. So listen and really create a routine. Really do something and pay attention to it. Don't just, oh, it's fine. I'll get over it.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
these
No,
are unprecedented
absolutely.
times. It's just,
Absolutely. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
go ahead.
But just I tell people to have a routine. To have a routine because routine makes us feel like we have purpose, right? So get up, shower, comb your hair, brush your teeth, do like you are going to do every single day if you're actually getting out in the world because you want to feel like you have purpose. And having that routine keeps us in the mindset that we have purpose, that we have something to do, we have something to look forward to. Also, just connect with your family. I'm so excited that my family, we do a Zoom because we're all over the place, right? Like I said, I'm originally from Georgia, but I'm here in the DC area. My family is still in Georgia. And this Sunday we had a Zoom. We do a Zoom every Sunday with all of our extended family on my maternal side, and we have a cousin who's in Singapore. He was able to join us, and just staying connected. And sad to say we probably we weren't talking to each other as much, as we are now, but we have a lot of elderly on my maternal side. And so, and some that live alone. So keeping them engaged with the Zooms, it gives them something to look forward to. You know, um, there are a lot of different outlets that you can take to engage, to become connected to other people. Um, like Duo is an app that I talk to my best friends every Friday night. Sometimes we're talking for 6 hours at a time, but it's a video chat and it's very engaging. So just staying connected, making the effort to stay connected. And I will tell you this. I didn't always do that pre-COVID because life, right? Life told you guys I was a social butterfly, so I was always out and about. But like calling people and talking to people, not wasn't really my thing, but it has helped me in this process, with my self-care tips. So, getting engaged, I tell people like these Facebook groups are amazing. One, because you get to connect with other people. Like I'm in this Power Facebook group and I absolutely love it because the new season of Power started. And so I know every Monday that there's going to be some type of conversation around,
Mhm.
the episode. So it's like I know on Mondays I have someone to engage with. So find a show that you like, find the Facebook group because just about every show that's on TV right now has a Facebook group. Someone has started a Facebook group. Just do a search for it. If you really enjoy the show and want to talk about the episode, don't have anyone in your house to talk about it with, go in those Facebook groups and talk about it with the people who are doing what you're doing. I also tell people to absolutely check into meetup.com. Find people that have the same interest as you. And then you guys plan a very socially distant activity. Then that way you're not alone. That way you're not felt like that way you don't feel like you don't have any options. There
Mhm.
really are options out here for us to take care of ourselves. We just have to be a little bit more proactive and a little bit more engaging to ensure that we are exploring all of our options. All of our options. There are online game nights. TJ Mercer, she was doing like an HBC. I went to a HBCU, but she was doing like HBCU bingo. It was let me say, it was everything. The DJ was everything. She had $1 million worth of cash prizes and gifts. Like she really turned it into like this amazing opportunity. And kids that were going to HBCUs were able to get scholarships from just this online bingo game. So there are things out there that you can do. I mean, D Nice, right? He's giving us club quarantine.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Listen, some of my
I
best
get you through sometimes. Yes.
Yeah, some of my best dancing nights is being D Nice, just getting it in, right? But at the end of the day, it's like, our forever first lady Michelle Obama is in there. So it's like, I partied with Michelle Obama last night, that kind of thing. Or the verses, right?
The
These
verses. I lost my mind with Patty and Gladys. That was such a good night. I was singing like I was on the stage in the backup singing.
absolutely, it was a master class in talent and friendship. I lost my mind too. I lost my mind too. Like I was like I just like you forget the great hits, but then the idea that they were actually singing them, like they weren't just playing them, they were singing them. It was probably one of the best verses that I've attended. I completely enjoyed it. So, look for opportunities like that to become engaged. And because there's a whole community that's watching with you. You can participate in the chats with them. So there are ways to combat this idea of social isolation. There are ways that can take care of it. Because for 2 hours, for 3 hours, listening to that music, you're in a good mood. You're not thinking about your stresses. You're not thinking about things that are distressing you. You're not even thinking about COVID. You're just enjoying. So
Yeah.
find opportunities like that where you are able to enjoy things that may be out there for you.
Good. Okay, we have a question here.
Oh,
Um, it says, do you have any recommendations? This is a good question on how we can provide support to our family members that we know are struggling with mental health issues.
absolutely, absolutely. And this is always the hard part because you have family. Most people do not want to acknowledge it, but creating a safe space for them to talk, creating really a safe space. Tell me what you're going through. Tell me what's going on. And then encouraging them and letting them know that you are behind them 100% in terms of seeking help. I'll make the call with you. I'll stay on the phone with you. I'll come to the sessions with you. If you need support, I want you to know that you are not by yourself. I want you to know that there is help. And it does not mean that you are crazy or they're going to lock you up in the nut house. It doesn't mean any of that. What it means is that you are taking this opportunity to ensure that you are okay. So sometimes it's how we frame it. Unfortunately, in our community, we feel as if we pray about it, it's all good. you know, and God will take care of it, you know. And there's like this cute little saying that you can pray and go to therapy too, right? Because, you know,
Amen.
yeah, you know, you have to, and for people who are in that, I'm just gonna pray about it. You have to, you know, get them in a space of seeing that God will send someone who can help you, and that is the answer to your prayer. So going to see a therapist is not going against God's will, right? It's not going against trusting in God. It's not going against having faith in God. It does not test your faith in the Lord. But what it does is that He's talking to you and He's sending someone to you to help you with the issue. And so I think just taking that stigma away from it, just taking the blinders off away from that is, you know, very beneficial for people who need services. And then if they're at that extreme, you may just have to make the uncomfortable call to 911 to have them admitted. You know, and you know, it's very scary, right? Calling the authorities on our family. But I would rather them be safe and getting treatment in a place where people can manage it than them wreaking terror in your home. Because again, when people have mental health issues, they are not they're not themselves when those issues arise. So it does not mean that they are a bad person. This is just another aspect of them that is having an explosive moment and they need help in that moment.
That's good. That's good. Well, this has been so wonderful. Such good tips that we've received. Tell us, how can people stay in touch with you?
Awesome. So I am on Facebook under Dr. Roz Aker Black. So that's DrRozakerblack. My name, very long. But I'm on Instagram at Dr. Roz Aker Black. I'm on Twitter at Dr. Roz Aker Black. And I also have a podcast that you can follow. So if you follow me on any of those sites, then will be in tune with my podcast. You'll see the link to actually subscribe to my podcast, where we talk about things like this on a regular basis. We have these very engaging conversations about love, life, and everything else that comes with it.
Good.
It is the Dr. Roz Show.
The Dr. Roz.
Yeah, so you can actually go to YouTube and type in the Dr. Roz Show, and it'll bring you to my site, and you can subscribe there, and you'll see all of our podcasts.
Okay, that's good to know. Well, it has been a delight speaking with you. So glad that we got to chat and you shared some great nuggets. And we are so appreciative. Everyone, please follow. We ask everybody to continue to join us every Wednesday for our Co-work and Connect series. You can visit walkerslegacy.com for the latest and greatest activities. And everyone, have a good day.
There's another question. Oh, you did it. Okay, someone was looking for my name. Okay, you got it in there. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for wanting to discuss this very important topic. It's so worthy for the time that we are in right now. So thank you so much. Thank you, Walker's Legacy, for engaging in these conversations, because they're so needed. They're so needed in our community.
Thank you. All right. Have a great day, everyone.